Hello, everybody. If we could take our seats, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. We'll get started. I think we need to ask a couple of questions. I wanted to start off with one just to get it going, and that is, and you kind of touched on it at the end, where you have, well, someone mentioned to me earlier, you know, what is it about the Pope that doesn't get women and doesn't get sex abuse? And you've kind of touched upon the sex abuse piece, and maybe you've said it's not as much him as it is his bureaucratic office, but I'd be interested in your comments.
I think there is a problem with the Pope from the point of view of his age, obviously, and his experience in his own past. But I haven't seen any sign of reluctance to appoint women. I mean, he has women on the Economic Committee. He has a lot of women on the Pontifical Commission. He has accepted those appointments when they've gone to him immediately. He hasn't rejected any. I think on the abuse issue, he is very sincere. I think the problem area is bishop accountability. And I think people are extrapolating from that because there's bishops that haven't been removed, that there isn't any sincerity there. I do think there are problems around that. That doesn't mean I agree that it shouldn't have happened, not today, but a long time ago. But I do think there are other forces that are not helping him. And I can't say I know the man well enough to know exactly how he feels about women, but I certainly can say from his appointments that he certainly seems to have been quite comfortable with appointing women to his commissions and committees in his reform agenda.
If you have questions, there were microphones set up, so if you go to the microphone, then we'll go. Sorry to make you. It's good to exercise. It's good. Let me just ask one other question while you're getting to that, and that is, what expectations? I'm sure that in a small group or the big group, you must have thought, well, what can we get done in maybe just the short term? What is the first? You've already mentioned a couple of successes, I guess, but what would be your real goal, short term?
Obviously, the big headline one is bishop accountability. I think that is, and we have already sent, despite the fact that Father Lombardi on Monday, when he was commenting on the C9, said there was no document or proposal on the table. There was a document and a proposal on the table from the Commission for Protection of Children, Protection of Minors. There is a proposal which has gone, and if it goes through and is approved by the Pope, it will make a dramatic difference. And I think that will be one that will show people that real change can happen. But we're waiting to see it go through because, as I've said, there are those in the Vatican who would not want to see it go through. So, as we all know, there's a lot of Vatican politics. I'm not on the inside of it, but there's a lot of Vatican politics that goes backwards and forwards. The other things, obviously, we want to see. The guidelines project will take time. But I think each of the groups will try and do something that can be done quickly, as soon as possible. Now, what you or I would call quickly and what the Church calls quickly are two different things, and that's the worry. I think if we move too slowly, people are going to lose hope entirely that we're going to achieve anything.
Yes, sir.
This is our first.
At the microphone, please.
Mark.
Oh, I'm sorry, we have a question. I'm sorry, we have a question over here.
One of the largest concerns in the American church is the psychosexual immaturity of our seminarians, as well as the identified issues resulting from being raised in a very traditional church. Is there psychological testing that is being recommended by your commission regarding these issues?
Yes, I think you may have noticed there that there is one of the working groups, and they will be working on that whole area. And they will have psychiatrists, psychologists who will have experience in working in that area, but will bring in others. And no doubt they will bring in experts from here, I'm sure. the point is, if you have specific queries like that, you send it to that working group. But there is definitely a working group working on it. And the thing is, although we meet twice a year, I've just got to make one thing clear, we meet twice a year, the working groups are meeting all the time, and are corresponding all the time, and are working on their projects all the time. So they're not sitting around waiting for a biannual meeting. But there is one group specifically which is going to work on all those issues of immaturity, psychological problems, etc., in order to make that area as it should be.
Question here.
Stand up. I'll hold it. I'm holding it.
Yes. I don't see a diversity in your commission, because I didn't see anybody from Brazil, which is the largest Catholic country, neither in India, which even 5% would be about 50 million.
Yeah.
So this is what I thought was listing. So many other countries are not adequately represented. That's number one. The second thing I have, so you might have like to comment on that, but the more important thing is that a friend of mine, or at least a friend of my brother, he went to the seminary, a very brilliant student. Then he left the seminary as a priest. He went to Rome and everything else. And now subsequently became a professor in a famous university in Austria. What he was telling, and the writer of many books, I asked him this problem about sexual abuse. Doesn't it, I said, hopefully it doesn't happen in a place like I come from, which is Goa. I asked him, no, he says, you must be kidding. This was going on, but he says, if anybody complained, who would believe you? And that's where the problem comes. And this is where also not comes from the priest itself, but even from the family. If I were to say anything against the priest, God will take care of them. God, yes. They'll answer to God. In the meanwhile, we have to listen to whatever goes on. Yeah. So maybe how would we handle this problem?
Well, part of, I mean, again, this is something we've looked at, and part of what we're trying to plan in the education of church leaders, part of that will be to educate the local church. And the hope is that those in the local church will then bring the education out into society. We also have, I forgot to mention it, there's another thing that has been approved, and that is any country or any organization looking for funding from the church to work in famine areas or things like that, they will only get the funding if at least one member of their team is trained in child protection. The idea is to try and bring it onto the ground. It's big, but it will take time. On not having someone from Brazil and India, I agree with you. You know, it was so difficult, and you would say there are big gaps. But the commission will change. It will be a 3-year term, and in 3 years' time, there will be new members coming on. We can stay on for a second term, but not everybody will. So when the commission changes, there may well be people brought in then from other countries. So it's not a permanent situation.
Anne?
Marie, congratulations on your decision to remain free of the dicasteries. Very smart. Thank you. But my question is, if you're free of them and not relying on them, where will your funding come from? I can't help asking the question because I'm the votive treasurer. I need to know, what do you think is the most likely source of your funding?
Well, as exactly the opposite from yourself, not being in the funding area at all, we are simply hoping Cardinal Pell will find something from somewhere. I'm sure, you know, he found 500 million for 6 months, I think, of his work. So if we could get that first, it could keep us going quite a while. I don't have the detail. The Vatican has got to find the money if it wants to prove it's sincere about child protection. And children's lives are so important, they cannot be put in danger for the lack of funds. And the money will have to be found somewhere. And the Vatican can find it when they want to. So let's hope they want to.
Sheila? Yes, very good. Sheila?
Marie, thank you for sharing your story. My question regards the makeup of the commission. Do you feel that 2 victims is a sufficient number on the commission?
I think when you look at it as a proportion of the Commission, you know, you've 17 members of the Commission, you're trying to cover so many areas of the world. We would like actually have had a survivor from somewhere other than Europe. Both of us are from Europe. It's difficult. If you think about it, it was an enormous breakthrough to get one survivor on the Commission. To get two was even better. I think if we had tried to get more, it maybe would have made it. I just think we have to make our victories bit by bit and not expect to win over the world all in one go. It's all I can say is the expertise, we need expertise as well, and both Peter and I have different expertises, and I have worked on guidelines and I've worked in various areas. We're not just there as survivors, we're there as survivors with certain expertise. And I know there are survivors all around the world with enormous expertise and enormous knowledge, and I'd have them all on there. But if you have 17, I don't know, my maths is not good enough to say what percentage 2 is of 17, but for the moment, personally, I feel that it's an achievement to have the 2 on there. And hopefully in the future, we will have more. There's also the problem, many survivors wouldn't say yes. Many just would not want anything to do with it. You know, I have tried to contact certain survivors just to get their opinions and see if they want to have any input into the Commission. They won't speak to me. So there are problems, you know. As a survivor, I'm happy that there's survivors on there. And I don't mean just that I'm on there, but that there are survivors on there and the survivor voice is being heard. It would be good to have more, but I think it's a breakthrough for the Vatican to have 2 survivors. Up to now, they haven't let survivors pass the gate.
I think we've seen the quality of this survivor, so it's in pretty good hands, even though it's smaller numbers. Yes.
Hi, Marie. Ann Barrett-Doyle from bishopaccountability.org. I learned so much from your presentation. My question, it's really something you're already aware of more than anyone, is that the circular letter that you referred to that the CDF put out in 2011 does not contain any provision for zero tolerance.
Yep.
It has a phrase that looks like zero tolerance, but is not. It, in fact, allows bishops to retain guilty priests if they are deemed not a threat to children and not a cause for scandal. And we see this as we do research in countries around the world. We see this playing out in very devastating ways. And we have researched the Philippines and Argentina and Brazil and Chile, and we see bishops keeping guilty priests in ministry.
Yeah, I understand.
So how are you, and I know that this circular letter has formed the basis for most of those 90% of those national policies that you guys are about to review.
That's right.
I am so glad you're on that working group. What are you going to do, or what's going to be the strategy for the fact that these policies don't have the same strong zero tolerance provision that even the U.S. bishops have?
What I'd say is that the circular letter is part of the past. It's there and it gave instructions, but we are working on the future, and we are not restricted to that letter. Certainly we would not see ourselves as restricted to it, whoever else might. So if we're looking at guidelines and we see that based on that they have weaknesses, well, that has to change. That's all I can say.
Just a quick follow-up. So even if it took them years to get 90% done, they were way past their deadline, would you actually say, the commission say, these have to go back to the drawing board, they're
all going to be looked at afresh, every one of them. And if they have weaknesses as far as the members of the group, the guidelines group feel, then yes, they will have to. They won't just be accepted because it's going to take time or effort. We can't not do something because it's going to take time and effort.
Very good. Sheila?
Hi, Marie. I want to thank you again on behalf of all of us for all the great work that you do. I'm from Canada, and in the 80s we had the Winter Commission. I think that there was more public exposure of this problem as we moved through the 90s in the United States. North America has been a real bed for the exposure of this problem and continues to be a place where it's hidden. I thought it was quite remarkable when I looked at your map how little, in fact, there's no representation from North America except for a cardinal. Could you speak to, I think it was a glaring omission. And I'm wondering if you could help us understand why that choice was made.
Yeah, there's actually 3 out of the 17 from America. You have Cardinal O'Malley, you have Monsignor Bob Oliver, and you have Kristen Wintergreen. And they are all American. So it would be very difficult. In fact, America has the largest numbers of members on the commission because Cardinal O'Malley is a member of the commission. Monsignor Bob Oliver, although he's secretary, he's also a member of the commission. Christine Wintergreen is also a member of the commission. So the 3 of them are 3 out of the 17. So if you look at it numerically, America actually has the largest. Now, it may not be that the members that are there are the ones you would choose to represent America, but it is very difficult when you're trying to cover as many areas of the world as possible to put another American or more Americans on. That's the difficulty.
There are no Canadians.
Canadians. It's the same part of the world. As I say, we were trying to cover the Asian continent, the Oceania. It's not perfect. I wouldn't for 1 second say that the membership and the distribution is perfect. There will be turnover in members, and it won't be the same countries and the same people, because this commission, it's not going to have all its answers tomorrow. I would love to see all the work completed in a year. It's not going to happen, but we hope some of it will. But there will be turnover. But I can see your point, but that's the reasoning, that there was 3 American members, although they may not be the 3 that people would have wanted, but certainly there will be change in time.
Ann? Yep.
Oh, hi, Marie. Bob Hotzen, Road to Recovery. Marie, survivors are dying.
Yes?
And in any other catastrophe in the world, the Catholic Church would be pouring millions and millions of dollars into the resolution of that catastrophe, earthquakes, floods, etc. We don't have that yet. I consider this the Church's Holocaust, frankly. Is the Commission aware of this, and will the Commission be making funds available to organizations that help victims stay alive currently? We lost a victim last week in Massachusetts of suicide. We lost one 2 weeks ago of suicide in Pennsylvania. So it's difficult for us to understand. Commissions are going to take years to develop policies, but in the meantime, we need people. We need help for people.
I don't for 1 minute. I mean, I'm a survivor. My feelings are totally along the same lines as you and any other survivor, and I have to rein them in at times, because if I got as angry as I want to get, I wouldn't achieve anything. So, you know what I'm trying to say. I agree with you 100%. There are survivors dying in every country in the world. How the commission is set up as a commission for the protection of children in the future, basically. It really has not been set up to work with survivors now. The group I'm on, we have more or less, because we're survivors, have taken it on ourselves to say this group has to be in the commission. I think if it had been set up by the Vatican people, that group would not be there. Now, what we can achieve, I don't know. At the moment, we can't get funds for the work of the Commission, never mind getting funds to give to other organisations. If I had control over the funds, I would be pouring them into organisations that are saving lives. It's the thing of, you've got to work with what you've got, or you walk away. Will walking away achieve anything? I don't know. Because in some ways I feel, particularly if the survivors on the Commission walk away, there will be many in the Vatican be delighted. So it's not a question of colluding or agreeing with the position as it is. It's a question of saying, can we do as much as we can and keep bringing this up and keep it to the forefront? But I personally cannot promise that that's going to happen. All I can say is the awareness will be there because the survivors will keep bringing it to the attention. And that's the most we can do. I wish we could just solve everything. I really do. And it's not going to happen because the church just don't work like that. And they work so... You have to work with them to a certain extent, because if you're trying to work against them, you'll achieve nothing at all. So you have to bring them with you. It's very hard to bring them with you. And certainly to bring them to that point is quite a journey. It doesn't mean we're not going to try. And that's as far as I could say.
Thank you, Mark. Sheila?
I'm Tom Doyle. First off, Marie, you were terrific. And I want to piggyback on what Bob Hodson said. He knows as much, if not more than anybody, what's really going on in the trenches. Yeah. And so my question is, what is the awareness of the rest of the Commission of the actual damage, the profound damage done to the survivors and their families, including the spiritual damage done? There's very, very little ever said. And I don't think the hierarchy know how to answer, much less ask questions about the spiritual damage they've done. Is there a cognizance in the Commission of this issue?
What I'd say, Tom, is it's patchy. I mean, perfectly honest, there would be members of the Commission. I don't know everyone that well because we've only had one meeting now, but there are those who are working in their own specific area which would not be involved with survivors. And then there are those who are working with survivors daily. So probably a fair proportion of the Commission would have very good experience of working with survivors and knowing what's happening. There would be some who wouldn't, but it's up to the rest of us to educate them. And because, as you see, the different skill sets that people are bringing in from working with perpetrators or working with canon law or something, who may never have come in contact with survivors. It would be great if every single person on that commission had walked in your shoes for a month, or anyone else who's dealing with survivors. It would be terrific. And we're talking about educating the church leadership. I mean, we obviously need to educate all the commission members as well. That's why having survivors maybe on the commission is a good thing, because we can, if they show any ignorance, you know, we can bring that knowledge to bear on them if they don't understand it. And not everybody on the commission will be working in that area anyway. They'll be working, you know, if they're working on forensic assessments of seminarians or something. I'm not answering you very clearly, Tom. All I'm trying to say is no, everyone on the commission wouldn't have that knowledge. Cardinal O'Malley, who has worked firefighting, he's been in Fall River and in Boston, would know. Now, knowing and you know what you do about it, understanding is different, but there are many who have worked with survivors for years. Our Australian member, Kathleen, has worked with survivors for years. And we have, one of the members is, I think, a mother of a survivor, certainly a family member. So there's not only 2 survivors, there's a family member of a survivor. And the thing is that as time goes on, hopefully, if there is a lack in that area, we will bring it to the fore and make sure that they learn. I don't have the answer to it. The problem is if you made sure that anyone coming in had to have a deep knowledge and a deep experience of dealing with survivors, you cut out a number of people who are dealing in other areas that are also needed, who are policy writers and things like that. And I don't know if I'm making myself very clear. I'm trying to say that the point of the Commission is really child protection of the future. And we also want to do something about survivors now and pastoral care and abusive civil processes, etc. It would be wonderful if everyone on the Commission was deeply knowledgeable about survivors. But everyone would know a certain amount. It's not that they're ignorant completely. They would know a certain amount. Some would probably only know it in theory. Not everyone would have absolute hands-on experience. But there's enough people there that do have the experience to bring it to the others. It's not ideal, Tom, as I've said. It's just not ideal. It's not perfect, but I think it's a heck of a lot better than what anything the Vatican has put in place before.
Mark,
You're
we have
totally
time.
right.
Mark,
Thank you very much.
So I'm Lisa Bloom, and I am so humbled to be here with you and with all of you folks. It's just been water in the desert, as I keep saying to people. I am a survivor of child sexual abuse in my family, and I am a survivor to a large degree because of my faith. And I became a Catholic. I was baptized 25 years ago, and it's because of that faith community that I am here today. And because of certain circumstances that have arisen in our archdiocese in Seattle, I've had a real test of faith. And I've come to realize that children are not safe in my parish, and that kills me. My question to you is there a focus, or is there even a discussion about how all of this is impacting not only clearly the survivors of clergy sexual abuse, but all of the 1 in 4 girls, the 1 in 6 boys that are sitting in the pews?
Everything. It's hard. What's difficult to say is, from a Commission point of view, that everything is being looked at. But one or other of these groups, these working groups, are going to look as far as possible at everything. That's the idea of having so many small groups, that they can focus more. Certainly communities, parishes, those in parishes where there's been an abuser, all that is part of the work and is going to be looked at. I don't want anyone to come away feeling too hopeful about the Commission. All I can say is the plans are good. We're trying to do the work. I hope we will be able to do the work, and we will be able to bring in, not we, the church, because all we're going to do is advise, and the Pope then has to decide whether he goes with our advice or not, and we can't do anything beyond that. We are going to try and take in everything, and when we get this website or whatever system is in place up and running, what we want is people like you to say, are you looking at this? Because if we're not, then that will bring it to our attention. So there will be a way of you saying, look at this and give examples or whatever. And hopefully that will feed in to the work. So it's not perfect, it's not everything, and it can't do everything all at once.
Thank you. And just one final thing. If the church were finally to embrace its own responsibility for the damage that it's done, the gift it would be to people like me and everybody else that is suffering from this in other ways
it would change the world.
The problem is getting the church to see that.
I want to thank you very much for your presentation. I am a mother of a survivor, and it affected our whole family, emotionally, spiritually. Some of our children lost their faith in the church, not in Jesus Christ, or they are spiritual people, but they don't want to be part of this organization because the power is still in the hands of the few. And they're holding on to that power. Yep. And they are not transparent, nor they say they try, but in very, very small increments. That's my opinion. You're working against a tremendous force that wants to keep things the way they are.
Tell me about it.
You have brought out such a wonderful point about when you're dealing, the question I have with your organization, you can sit and you can come up with all these programs, but when you're dealing with the hierarchy of the church, where are they coming from morally? Is it legal, their legal matters? Are they taking care of their finances? Are they listening to us? How do we get them to listen? And what kind of an organization do we have to ask the hierarchy or to inspect the hierarchy on what they're doing? In this lady right over here, she still has the problem. We still have the problem that isn't being addressed. How do you deal with that with your commission?
All I can say is, I'm a member of this commission. I'm not a supporter of the leadership of the church, and I'm not a defender of them. I see everything you see. You know, it's a very difficult position for a survivor to be in, because it would appear I'm standing up here saying how wonderful the church is, and the church is going to do this, and the church is going to do that. I have all exactly the same feelings as you do, and as a survivor, even more so. I mean, I can see nothing but dysfunction and power and all the things that you're seeing, the leadership looking at their own positions, their own power, their own everything, and not having what a church should have, go back to Jesus, to the basics. That's what I want to see in the church. I'm working with this commission because I want to see children safer in the future, not because I think the church and the hierarchy are all wonderful and doing everything right. You know, I would be the biggest critic, and I would say all the things you have said, and it's an extremely difficult position I find myself in, because I do find people, because I'm on the commission, tend to think that I'm going to say positive things about the leadership, and I won't. It's extremely difficult. It's extremely difficult to work at that level, knowing all these things are going on in dioceses and in parishes. But it's a question of trying to ignore all that for the sake of the children, and that's all I can do.
Thank you, Marie. Thank you very much. Excellent. Thank you.